Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a sweet and totally swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead, raining down like a storm of glitter, draping the Grand Astoria ballroom in a lavish glow. Guests in elegant gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos glided across the hall, glasses of wine in hand, as if all of them were acting in a silent play. Meanwhile, Elena Carter, just a waitress in a plain black and white uniform, slipped through the sea of people with a tray of champagne. Her steps were steady enough to walk a tightrope, but her mind was running a marathon. Right, a salad here costs as much as my monthly rent, Elena muttered inwardly, keeping her polite smile. And I only get to smell it. Oh, what a romantic life. She leaned aside to avoid a lady wearing what looked like an entire garden of diamonds around her neck. The clinking of crystal glasses rang out. Elena sighed. The sound of money makes me want to dance salsa in the dishwashing area. Elena used to be a dancer, not the kind who did hip-hop in bars, but a classically trained performer, someone who once dreamed of Broadway. 4 years at Donovan Academy had turned her into a top star. She had everything: the spotlight, professors' praise, and prestigious scholarships. And then it all vanished. Her father's small business collapsed after a contract was crushed by a massive real estate corporation. The family lost their home, her father suffered a stroke, and her mother was drained by endless debt. Elena was forced to hang up her dance shoes, abandon the stage lights, and put on a waitress's apron. Her dreams seemed buried forever under the dust of reality. "Carter, chin up!" Mrs. Peterson, the manager, slid past, her whisper more like an order. "These people can smell fear from 100 feet away. Be polite, quick, and absolutely no trouble." Elena drew in a breath and forced a smile. No trouble? That used to be her specialty, until life decided to tease her. As she poured water at table 12, she felt a hostile gaze drilling into her. She looked up and met the icy blue eyes of Tristan Montgomery. Just the name Montgomery made the entire city tremble. They were the real estate dynasty, wealthy beyond measure, with a reputation spanning half of Manhattan. Tristan, third-generation heir, was the perfect image of power and arrogance. Slick golden hair, a proud smile, and a Rolex gleaming as if to scream, "I'm rich." Beside him sat his fiancée, Veronica Davenport, flawless as a wax statue, crimson lips and razor-sharp eyes. Tristan nudged Veronica, whispering loud enough for Elena to hear. "Look, darling, they're just like wind-up toys, walking back and forth with no soul at all." Veronica laughed, a sharp sound like shattering glass. "Don't be too cruel, darling. She's just trying to earn her tips." Heat rushed to Elena's face, but she held back, remembering Mrs. Peterson's warning. "Don't make trouble. Be a ghost, invisible." She set the glass of water down when Tristan pointed at a pin-sized drop on the tablecloth. "Sloppy? They actually hire people who work like this?" His two friends burst out laughing. Elena clenched her teeth, ready to walk away, when the band suddenly shifted to a fiery tango. Tristan smirked the dangerous smile of someone about to play a cruel game. He stood, pulled out a thick wad of cash, and let his voice boom across the ballroom. "Listen up, I've got an interesting proposal. $10,000. He waved the money, making several guests gasp. "If this waitress can dance a tango with me right here without stumbling, she gets it all. But if she fails—" Tristan turned toward the horrified Mrs. Peterson, rushing over. "She loses her job." The room went silent, then erupted in whispers. Elena froze. A public humiliation, a dirty trap. But when her eyes locked on his smug grin, memories came flooding back. Rejection letters, her father's heart monitor beeping in the hospital, her abandoned dance shoes. A spark ignited inside her chest. She would not let him decide her worth. Elena set down her tray, calmly untied her apron, and folded it neatly. She stepped out of her server's shoes, leaving only herself and the music. The entire ballroom held its breath. Elena walked forward, eyes fierce. "Fine, I accept." Tristan clasped her hand, leading with smug confidence. But after only a few steps, Elena suddenly spun, her body melting into the rhythm of the tango. Each move was fluid, powerful, passionate, as if she had never left the stage. Tristan stumbled, his face reddening, while Elena steered him like a puppet. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered like a storm. Elena finished with a flawless spin, her hair flying, her eyes blazing. When they finally let go, Tristan staggered and collapsed onto the floor. In that moment, she was no longer the invisible waitress. She was Elena Carter, a dancer, the woman who turned a cruel joke into a triumphant moment. At the corner of the hall, a man raised his camera, his heart pounding almost as fast as hers. Nate Crow. He knew he had just captured a moment that would change someone's life, and maybe his own. The tango music had barely ended when the Grand Astoria ballroom fell into a stunned silence. Only the ragged breath of Tristan Montgomery remained the arrogant air, face flushed, sweat dripping down. In stark contrast, Elena Carter stood tall, hair slightly tousled from spinning, her eyes blazing like a flame reignited. And then, "Bravo!" A single clap echoed from the back of the hall. Then came 2, 3, 10, and in an instant, the entire ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Heels clattered against the floor, chairs scraped as guests rose to their feet. No one cared about $1,000 wine or tedious political conversations anymore. Every gaze locked onto the barefoot young woman standing in the center of the hall, as if she were a queen descending from her own throne. Elena drew a deep breath, her cheeks burning. She had received applause before at Donovan Academy, but this was fiercer. This wasn't an audience paid to clap, it was the wealthy, the untouchable, now cheering for her, a waitress. And Tristan? He stood rooted to the floor, as if someone had ripped the crown straight off his head. His face twisted, the smug grin long gone, replaced by a look seething with hatred. He sucked in a sharp breath, yanked the wad of cash from his jacket pocket, and suddenly hurled it to the ground. $100 bills scattered like dead leaves. "There, yours, pick it up, waitress. That's all you're worth." The hall froze. The applause strangled midair. Tristan's cruelty made several guests frown. Some whispered, and a few women shook their heads. Elena looked down at the scattered bills. $10,000. With that, she could pay her rent, buy her father's medicine, and even have a little left to start over. The practical, survival-driven part of her urged her to stoop and grab it. But then she lifted her head and met Tristan's arrogant gaze. In his eyes, there was no respect, only the contempt of a man who believed money defined everything. Elena slowly shook her head. Her voice wasn't loud, but it rang clear in the dead silence. "Mr. Montgomery, you're mistaken. I didn't dance for your money. I danced for myself." A ripple of murmurs spread. A few quiet ohs escaped. Someone clapped this time, not alone, but followed by others, carrying forward the fire Elena had lit. The applause returned, fiercer, louder, more powerful than before. Elena bent down not to pick up the bills, but to slip back into her worn serving shoes. The motion was sharp, proud. Then she folded her white apron, draped it over her arm like a cloak, and walked off the dance floor, without a single glance back. Tristan stood paralyzed while the ballroom exploded. In one corner, Nate Crow hadn't lifted his eye from the lens. From the moment Tristan had stood to challenge Elena, Nate had raised his camera, instinctively telling him something was about to happen. And he had been right. Click, click, click. He captured every frame. Tristan's smug grin as he waved the money, Elena's fiery eyes as she accepted the challenge, the spin of her hair catching the lights, and finally her proud stance in the storm of applause. But the last shot was the most striking. Elena, face flushed, eyes alight, standing above the scattered bills she had left behind. Nate lowered the camera, his pulse racing. He had photographed countless moments of politicians, movie stars, tycoons, but never had he seen an image so raw, so powerful. This wasn't just a photo. It was an entire story in a single frame. He whispered, "She didn't just dance. She declared to the world that she exists." While Nate busied himself reviewing the shots on his screen, Elena slipped backstage, where Mrs. Peterson was waiting, torn between fear and awe. "Elena, my God, are you insane? Do you even know what you've just done?" Elena panted, heart still hammering from the dance. But she only smiled faintly and shrugged. Maybe I am insane, but at least I was myself, if only for a moment. Mrs. Peterson stared at her, eyes misting over. She had grown accustomed to watching her staff being belittled and treated like furniture by the wealthy. But tonight, a waitress had held her head high, turning humiliation into glory. Out in the ballroom, the echo still lingered. A few guests abandoned their tables, walking past Tristan without so much as a glance. Veronica Davenport, his fiancée, tugged lightly at his arm, but Tristan jerked away, face hard as stone. He had been humiliated in front of the elite, in front of dozens of cameras. And at the far end of the hall, Nate's gaze remained fixed on the backstage door where Elena had disappeared. He had never wanted to meet a stranger so badly. He rubbed his chin, eyes gleaming. This wasn't just a dance. This was the beginning of a story. That night, Elena went home with aching feet but a heart ablaze. She knew tomorrow would bring bad news. Maybe she'd lose her job. Maybe she'd face Tristan Montgomery's retaliation. But tonight, in those few fleeting minutes, she had reclaimed her dream, reclaimed herself. She didn't need the money. She needed this, the feeling of being alive. And she had no idea that somewhere else in the city, a young photographer was carefully saving her images, his eyes shining as if he had just found something more precious than a Pulitzer. The next morning, New York's pale light filtered through thin curtains, casting faint patterns onto the peeling walls of a small Queens apartment. Elena Carter lay flat on her back, eyes wide open. She hadn't slept a wink. Every time she drifted off, the wild tango from last night replayed. The glittering chandeliers, the feverish music, and Tristan Montgomery's ashen face as she led him like a puppet on the floor. I probably just signed my own termination papers, Elena sighed, dragging herself out of bed. Her cheap phone buzzed furiously on the nightstand, notifications chiming nonstop. She frowned, picked it up. OMG, Elena, you're on the front page. You're the gala dancer, right? Your tango video has already garnered 3 million views. Elena blinked. Gala? Dancer? She tapped open Twitter, and her heart nearly leapt out of her chest. Hashtags dominated the trending list. # gala dancer, # tango queen, # David versus Goliath. The video of her fiery tango with Tristan had spread across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. People weren't just sharing the dance, but that moment when she refused to pick up the $10,000 and walked away with her head held high. A headline screamed across her feed, Gala dancer, the barefoot waitress who made the elite rise to their feet. Elena's mouth fell open. She, a nobody, was suddenly mentioned alongside politicians and A-list celebrities. Of course, reality was quick to throw cold water on the idea. She opened her email. A message from the hotel HR department. Employment contract suspended. We will be in touch. Elena groaned, collapsing into a chair. Perfect. Yesterday, I was an invisible waitress. Today, I'm the nation's favorite unemployed sensation. And yet, beneath the sarcasm, a small ember glowed. She didn't need tips or a serving contract. What she had gained last night was life. For one brief moment, she had been herself again, the girl who once dreamed of the stage. Meanwhile, at the newsroom of the New York Herald, Nate Crow was wading through the morning chaos. His name was no stranger to the press. A Pulitzer-winning journalist and photojournalist, Nate's face was often seen in war zones and at historic events. He was known for his gift of freezing truth in every shot. A glance, a smile, a single tear could tell an entire story. And last night, in the dazzling glow of the Grand Astoria, Nate knew he had captured the story of a lifetime. The article he filed shot straight to the front page. The headline read, Arrogant Millionaire Challenges Waitress to Tango and Loses Before Hundreds. His photo series spread even faster than the video. The first shot, Tristan flashing a wad of cash, that smug grin. The second, Elena mid-spin, hair flying, eyes blazing. The third, Elena walking away, bills scattered at her feet, her posture radiating pride. Editors were already calling it the Downfall Trilogy. Leaning back in his chair, Nate smirked. He had photographed everything from war in Syria to presidential elections, But nothing had moved him like this. That girl, Elena Carter, hadn't just danced. She had declared to the world she couldn't be bought. He murmured, I have to see her again, not as a headline, but as a person. Back in Queens, Elena was trying to survive the social media hurricane. She pulled the blanket over her head, but the pings kept exploding. People were calling her a real-life heroine, a symbol of dignity. Someone had even started a fan page titled, Bring Gala Dancer to Broadway. Elena hugged her pillow, torn between laughing and panicking. Wonderful. But who's paying my dad's medical bills now? The doorbell rang. Elena jumped. She peeked through the crack. A tall man in a gray trench coat stood there, camera slung over his shoulder. She recognized his face instantly. Elena cracked the door open. And you are? The man smiled, warm brown eyes meeting hers. I'm Nathaniel Crowe. Call me Nate. Journalist, photographer. I was the one who shot the photos last night. Elena blinked. So you're the culprit who turned me into a national meme? Nate laughed, raising his hands in surrender. Sorry if I overwhelmed you, but I've never seen anyone step onto a stage like that in a place where you were expected to stay silent and endure. It wasn't just a good story. It was a story that needed to be told. Elena crossed her arms, tilting her head. And what is it you want? An exclusive interview? Or maybe a follow-up series of me scrubbing dishes and mopping floors? No, Nate said, his tone unexpectedly serious. I want to know who you are. I want the world to see Elena Carter, not just the gala dancer. Elena stared at him. In his eyes, there was no pity, no cheap curiosity, only respect, and that made it hard to turn away. She shrugged, pulling the door wider. All right, but you make your own coffee. I don't serve off the clock. Nate chuckled as he stepped into the tiny apartment, glancing past the piles of unpaid bills and the dusty dance shoes in the corner. He didn't see poverty here. He saw a story waiting to be written. That afternoon, as the last light of day streamed through the small window, Elena sat curled up on the sofa, sipping coffee while scrolling through the endless comments about the gala dancer. Most were positive, even enthusiastic. One person wrote, "Get her on a Broadway stage already." Elena chuckled. Sure, let's start by getting instant noodles on stage first. The doorbell rang. She assumed it was another reporter. But when she opened the door, standing before her was a silver-haired man, small in stature yet sharp-eyed, dressed so simply he looked nothing like the glittering guest from the night before. Elena Carter? His voice was deep and husky, but it carried the resonance of someone who belonged on a stage. Yes, that's me. But if you're here to offer me a ramen commercial, I'll have to decline right away. Elena replied, half joking, half serious. The man's lips curved faintly, as if her remark amused him. My name is Victor Moreau. Perhaps you've heard of me? Elena nearly dropped her cup. Who hadn't heard of him? Victor Moreau is a legendary director and a Broadway master with a string of iconic productions. He was the man every actor and dancer dreamed of auditioning for. Good heavens! It's really you, Elena stammered, trying to appear composed. Sorry, I don't have roses to welcome such an honored guest. Victor chuckled, his eyes drifting toward the dusty old dance shoes sitting in the corner. I was in the audience last night. I saw your tango. That wasn't entertainment, it was art. A soul on fire. Elena's heart pounded in silence. I'm staging a new production of Echoes, Victor continued. I need a lead dancer, and I want you to audition. The room seemed to spin. Elena clutched her coffee cup, fighting not to spill it. For years, she had done nothing but carry trays and wipe tables. And now, a Broadway legend was inviting her to audition? Sir, I gave up dancing 4 years ago. I'm not the Donovan Academy girl anymore. Her voice faltered. My body, my technique, it's all rusted over. Victor nodded slightly, his gaze unwavering. Technique can be retrained, but the fire I saw in your eyes last night, no one can teach that. I didn't come to beg you to return. I came to open a door. Whether you step through it is up to you. He handed her a business card, bowed politely and left, leaving Elena standing breathless, as if the air had been snatched away. When the door closed, Elena collapsed onto the chair, hands trembling around the card. A soft chuckle rose behind her. Nate Crow, who was still sitting in the room after their earlier talk, rested his chin on his hand, eyes glinting as though he'd just witnessed history turn. Well, if life were a movie, he said, this would be the scene where the heroine gets her golden ticket to Broadway. Elena spun around. Don't tease me. I've been out for 4 years. Do you know what 4 years do to a dancer? Turns her into a grocery clerk. Nate tilted his head, smiling gently. All I know is that 4 minutes last night were enough to turn a waitress into the gala dancer who set the world on fire. Elena went silent. He leaned forward, his tone more earnest. Elena, I've traveled everywhere from the Middle East battlefields to the grandest concert halls. I've seen countless faces fighting to be remembered. But last night, you didn't fight for it. You made an entire room remember your name with a single dance. But what if I fail? Elena whispered, eyes clouded with fear. What if I audition and they reject me? I don't know if my heart can take it again. Nate's gaze locked with hers, unwavering. Then let the world reject you. But before it does, give yourself the chance to prove you're still alive. If you don't, you'll be rejecting yourself forever. Elena's chest tightened. His words pierced straight through her. That evening, as Nate prepared to leave, Elena walked him to the door. He turned, smiling softly. Tomorrow I've got an interview at the Herald, but I think the story I really want to keep writing is yours. Elena laughed, waving him off. My story? An unemployed waitress, drowning in debt, addicted to coffee? Nobody would read that. Wrong. Nate stepped closer, close enough that only a breath separated them. People don't want to read about the flawless. They want to see those who fall and dare to rise again. That's you, Elena. In that moment, her heart stumbled not from the compliment, but from the look in his eyes, a look that made her feel important. Not a subject in a lens, a person. Night fell. Elena sat alone, staring at Victor Moreau's card. Her hands trembled. The fear was still there, but in her chest, something else was growing. Hope. And for the first time in 4 years, Elena allowed herself to think, maybe I really should come back. The sound of Dan's shoes striking the wooden floor echoed across the vast rehearsal studio, so wide that even Elena's breathing seemed amplified. The massive mirror reflected her figure, slender but charged with determination. Her shoulders trembled slightly each time she spun, still not sharp enough. Again! Victor's gravelly voice cut through the space, sharp as a blade. He sat upright on a wooden chair, thin cane tapping in rhythm against the floor. Your knees need to lock strongly. The turn lacks force. You're letting emotion overtake technique. Sweat trickled down her temple. Elena bit her lip. This was the 10th time she repeated the same basic sequence. Each mistake earned no harsh words, but Victor's gaze alone sent chills through her, the gaze of a man who had trained dozens of great dancers, a man who accepted no weakness. She inhaled deeply. 1, 2, 3. Pivot. Arms open, rise to point. Her face tightened so much it felt like it might crack. Muscles unaccustomed after 4 years screamed in fiery pain, as though pierced by 100 needles. Victor struck the cane against the floor. Crack. Not enough. You're dancing like a girl trying to impress at a gala, not an artist who breathes through every step on stage. If you can't endure this, stop now. The stage has no place for half-heartedness. His words fell like a hammer blow. Elena froze. Her hands clenched so tight her knuckles whitened. For a moment she wanted to give in, just as she had 4 years ago. But no, not this time. She closed her eyes and remembered that night at the gala. Tristan's contemptuous stare, then the thunderous applause after she turned his mockery into triumph. That feeling of being alive, of being herself, she would not lose again. Eyes open, Elena spun once more, flinging herself into the movement with every shred of pride she still had. The steps weren't perfect, but the fire in her eyes lit up the room. Victor was silent for a long time. Then he gave a curt nod, voice dry as dust. Good. That's enough for today. Tomorrow we'll see if you still have this fire. Elena nearly collapsed as she stepped off the floor. Her body shook, legs burning as though ablaze. She sank into a chair, clutching her water bottle like a lifeline. Just then, a familiar voice drifted from the doorway. I don't know a thing about dancing, but I do know you just made the whole room tremble. Elena looked up. Nate stood there, camera dangling from his neck, holding two chilled water bottles. He handed her one. No fancy words, just a steady gaze. Quiet yet powerful. How long have you been watching? Elena asked, cheeks flushing. Since your third fall, Nate replied calmly, lips quirking in a small smile. I almost ran in to catch you, but I figured Victor would throw me out. So I just took pictures instead. Elena let out a soft laugh, then sighed. Did I look terrible? Nate shook his head. I saw someone fighting herself. And trust me, cameras don't lie. Silence hung between them, broken only by Elena's racing heartbeat. For years, she had hidden fear behind smiles, but under his lens, she felt utterly seen. That afternoon, as Elena staggered out of the studio, the sunset spilled across the cobblestone street. The wind brushed past her, carrying back old memories. 4 years ago, in light just like this, she had folded her last costume, hung up her dance shoes, and walked away from the studio. With her family ruined and her father relying on her income, her dream had come to an end. She had thought she'd never return. Now each step was heavy, yet radiant with hope. At least this time, I came back, Elena whispered. Elsewhere in the city, Tristan Montgomery slammed a newspaper down on his desk. On the front page, a photo of him from the gala was juxtaposed with a still of Elena's blazing spin. The headline read, "The Challenger Defeated. Mysterious Dancer Conquers the Gala." Tristan's teeth ground together, face burning red. From a proud air, he had become a laughingstock across social media. His phone rang nonstop with mocking messages. Fine then, Elena Carter, he muttered, eyes blazing with hatred. You'll pay for making me the clown before the entire world. Music pulsed through the studio, Elena's face glistening with sweat. She spun, arms stretching long, legs slicing through the rhythm with sharp precision. When the music cut off, her breathing was ragged, her heart pounding wildly, yet her body felt light, as though she had just rediscovered herself. Victor folded his arms and gave a single nod. Just one, but to Elena, it felt as valuable as a gold medal. Better, he said bluntly, but not enough. Rest 3 minutes, then do it again. Elena bit back a smile and simply nodded. She knew that in Victor's world, true praise was rarer than diamonds. When she stepped out of the studio, Elena found Nate sitting on the front steps, sleeves rolled up on his white shirt, holding 2 bottles of juice. He whistled as soon as he saw her. Well, look who's back from battle. Did you win or lose today? Win, obviously. Look, I'm still alive. Elena raised her hand in mock pride. Alive? But you look like a zombie, Nate said, handing her a bottle. Elena laughed, taking a gulp before nearly choking. Orange and carrot? What am I? A rabbit? Rabbits are cute, suits you. Nate winked. Elena flushed, looking away. Stop talking nonsense. But her lips betrayed her, curving into a smile. That evening, they grabbed dinner at a small diner. Nate kept piling food into her bowl, and Elena kept glaring at him. Are you trying to turn me into a pig? You won't stop. I like pigs, cute, chubby, lovable. Elena almost choked, tossing a napkin at his face. Nate, are you begging me to throw you out of this restaurant? But admit it, food tastes better with you here. Maybe you've cast some kind of spell on me. Yeah, the spicy kind. It's called chili, Elena shot back, making Nate laugh until he nearly doubled over. The atmosphere was so warm and lively, Elena forgot her exhaustion. But then Nate tilted his head, voice softening into seriousness. Elena, why did you quit dancing 4 years ago? I know there's something heavier behind that smile. Elena fell silent for a few seconds. Then she set down her chopsticks, fingers tightening around her glass. My family used to own a small company. We played fair, made building materials. Not rich, but steady. We were proud. Her voice lowered. Until Montgomery Corp set their sights on us. Her eyes sharpened, as though the memory alone could pierce her chest. They didn't compete honestly. They cut off suppliers, spread lies, and pressured banks to freeze our loans. The final blow was a fake deal, crafted to destroy our reputation. In less than a year, my father's company went from stable to drowning in debt. Elena inhaled, trying to steady her tone. My father couldn't bear it. His heart condition relapsed. My mother panicked. And me, I had no choice but to give up dancing, work any job I could find to cover hospital bills, and keep us afloat. Nate listened in silence, eyes fixed gently on her face. Elena gave a weak shrug, forcing a smile. Sounds like a tragedy, right? But at least I survived. At least I still have my legs to dance. The one thing Montgomery Corp couldn't take from me was the belief that someday I'd return. Nate set his chopsticks down and reached out, his hand brushing hers. You tell it like it's nothing, but I know how strong you had to be. And let me be clear. Elena looked up. Clear about what? That I hate the Montgomerys to my core. I'm a photojournalist. I could dig up a mountain of evidence. If you'll let me, I'll publish. Elena yanked her hand back, shaking her head. No, Nate, my father's still ill. I don't want more trouble. I'm not ready. Nate studied her, then nodded without pushing. His voice dropped to a quiet promise. All right, I won't push, but remember this. I'm here, whenever you need me. Elena's heart trembled. It had been so long since she'd felt an invisible embrace, strong enough to cradle the wounds she kept hidden. On the way home, Elena teased, Nate, don't you think you've said I'm here a few too many times? It's starting to sound cheesy. Nate feigned surprise. Oh, really? I thought you liked it. I was even planning to engrave it on a mug for you. Elena burst out laughing, nudging his shoulder. You're impossible. Yep, impossible for life. Can you handle that? The unexpected words stopped her cold. Her heart skipped a beat. Nate only smiled, saying nothing more as he gently opened the car door for her. And in that moment, Elena realized perhaps she was ready to let her heart feel again. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home, to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. Elena's official audition took place at the Donovan Theater. The audience seats were packed not only with faces from the art world, but also reporters and curious onlookers eager to see whether the waitress turned dancer overnight truly deserved her new spotlight or was just another fleeting sensation. Stepping onto the stage, the golden light bathed her dark brown hair. For the first few seconds, she could hear nothing but her own heartbeat. But as the music began, her body instantly fell in sync with the rhythm. Every spin, every flick of her arm carried both sharpness and grace. The grueling months of training under Victor's stern eye had not been wasted. The audience held its breath until the final note, and then the hall erupted, everyone rising to their feet in thunderous applause. The next morning, the press exploded. The New York Chronicle's arts page blared, "The Donovan Swan returns. Elena Dawson, the gala dancer." Online forums buzzed. Photos of her performance and videos from the audition spread like wildfire. Comments poured in. Can't believe she disappeared for 4 years. Beautiful, powerful, she really was Donovan's star back then. Elena Dawson, give her a chance. Reading them, Elena felt both warmth and unease. She had been away too long. Now, thrust into the center of public attention, could she withstand this storm? Just days later, a tabloid fired the first shot. Elena Alvarez, the arrogant gala girl who humiliated Tristan Montgomery in public. Dancer's sudden fame built on scandal. Clumsily edited clips circulated, showing Tristan reaching out and Elena appearing to push him away, completely omitting his arrogant provocation beforehand. Comment threads filled with venom. So she's not so innocent after all. Failed dancer chasing fame through scandal. Sitting in her tiny apartment, Elena's phone buzzed nonstop. Each time she opened it, hundreds of hateful comments awaited. She shut her laptop, gasping for breath. For the first time in months, her confidence faltered. Maybe I shouldn't have come back. Maybe this storm will drown me again. A knock echoed at the door. Elena hesitated until a familiar voice called out, Elena, I know you're in there. If you don't open, I'm climbing through the window. 3rd floor isn't that high. She laughed through her tears and opened the door. Nate stepped inside holding a paper bag. He set it on the table. Mango smoothie, antidote to gossip. Elena shot him a look. Do you even realize how serious this is? The whole internet is calling me a public bully. Nate shrugged and calmly opened his laptop. Then let the internet see the truth. I've got it right here. On the screen, he played the full uncut video from the gala. Tristan stepping forward with arrogance, his sneering challenge, the way he tugged at her, and how Elena turned his humiliation attempt into a blazing tango. The thunderous applause was unmistakable. Elena stared, stunned. Where did you even get this? I'm Nate Crow, remember? Journalist, photographer. Digging up truth is my job. A gala video is nothing. The question is, he turned to her, eyes steady. Do you want to release it? Elena pressed her lips together. Part of her wanted to clear her name, but another part trembled. Stirring the storm might only make things worse. If we do this, the Montgomerys won't sit quietly. They'll come after you too. Nate smirked. I've never cared if they forgive me. What matters is, can you hold your head high? That afternoon, the city's biggest news site published Nate's article with the full video, The Truth Behind the Dance. Elena Alvarez didn't humiliate anyone, she simply defended herself with talent. Within hours, the footage spread across every platform. Thousands of comments shifted. Wow, she's incredible. Tristan's the one who should be ashamed. I've rewatched this 10 times. Elena is a star. This is the dancer we need. Public opinion flipped overnight. Tristan became a meme, while Elena blazed brighter than ever. That evening, messages of support flooded Elena's phone. Yet the one knocking on her door again was still Nate, this time holding 2 pizza boxes. Thought we should celebrate taking down a scandal. You're paying, by the way. Hey, Elena laughed, tossing a cushion at him. Through her laughter, she looked at him, her heart softening. During these turbulent days, Nate had been her shield, joking so she wouldn't crumble, and using the truth to protect her. Quietly, she murmured, "Thank you, Nate." He raised a brow. Just words? I think a living room tango would be a better thank you. Elena laughed, embarrassed yet warm. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. But the internet never rests. The meme of Tristan's humiliation had gone viral, but soon bloggers, independent journalists, and nosy internet sleuths dug deeper. Old headlines, buried financial reports, and long-forgotten rumors began resurfacing. Remember the Riley Company bankruptcy 4 years ago? Rumor had it Montgomery Corp orchestrated it with dirty tricks. Right, and there were at least 2 other deals where small shareholders were forced to sell out. If we dig further, there's bound to be worse. Within 48 hours, the hashtag # exposed Montgomery Corp climbed into Twitter's top 3. Half-baked articles spread like wildfire. Montgomery Corp, an empire built on corruption? We need a whistleblower to speak up. In her apartment, Elena stared at the endless flood of posts. Her chest tightened when she saw her father's name in some of them. Riley Company was a prime victim of Montgomery Corp's takeover tactics. Though only speculation, the bitter truth rang too close to her own memories. Nate handed her a coffee, his voice steady, resolute. See? The world needs someone like you, someone brave enough to tell the truth. Elena bit her lip, silent. The world might be urging her to step forward, but she wasn't ready. The wound still cut too deep. And so, while public outrage mounted against Montgomery Corp, Elena could only cling to her dancing and her family. Deep down, she knew the real storm was still to come. Late at night, the Donovan stage had just gone dark after a long rehearsal. Exhausted, Elena stepped into her small apartment when her phone rang. On the screen, the words St. Mary's Hospital flashed. Her heart instantly plummeted. Hello? Her voice trembled. On the other end, the doctor spoke. Your father was just rushed in. He suffered respiratory failure. We've stabilized him for now, but he'll need long-term treatment, possibly extended hospitalization. Elena's bag slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor. Her mind reeled. For years, despite everything, her father had always tried to look strong. She had never seen him collapse like this. 15 minutes later, Elena was at the hospital. She rushed into the room to find her father lying pale, an oxygen mask strapped to his face. His hand, The same one that had once steadied her first dance steps was now frail and trembling. Dad? Elena gripped his hand, eyes blurring with tears. He opened his eyes slightly, managing a weak smile. My girl, I'm fine. Don't worry. But Elena knew it was only a reassurance. The doctor approached, serious. Mr. Alvarez will need specialized care, including medication and long-term respiratory support. The cost will be significant. The figures hit her like a hammer. Her tiny savings, plus the modest donations from the GoFundMe, covered barely a fraction. A wave of helplessness crashed down on her chest. As she sat dazed in the hallway, eyes red and swollen, a familiar voice broke the silence. I told you, if you don't answer my calls, I'll climb through your window. Luckily, hospitals have front doors. Elena looked up. Nate stood there, rein still clinging to his coat, holding 2 cups of hot coffee. He didn't say much, just pressed one into her hand. Drink? You'll need a clear head to take care of your dad. Elena let out a watery laugh. Do you ever stop joking? Nope, because if you cry, I'll hurt too. So I'd rather you complain at me instead. The lightness of his words warmed her in ways she didn't expect. Soon after, the doctor returned with more forms to sign. Elena stared at the stack, her hands shaking. I don't even know how to cover this. Nate sat beside her, calm as though his words were the most natural thing in the world. Then we'll handle it together. Don't shoulder it alone. No, this is my responsibility, my family's burden. Elena shot to her feet, her voice breaking. Nate didn't argue. He simply looked at her, quietly, until his voice dropped lower, steadier. Elena, you've carried too much on your own. I saw you when they smeared your name, when you feared failure, when you trembled on stage. I've seen it all. So why not, just once? Let someone stand beside you? Her throat tightened. Since the collapse of her family, she had trained herself never to lean on anyone. Every expectation had only led to disappointment. But Nate's eyes were different. They were patient, unflinching, and filled with a genuine will to share her burden. That night, the two of them sat in the harsh neon glow of the hospital corridor. Elena's voice was quiet, fragile. You know, the day we lost everything, my father still smiled at me. He said if I just kept dancing, everything would be okay. But I quit. I left the stage. I failed him. And now, I can't even afford to save him. Nate didn't interrupt. He simply let her unearth the truths she had buried for so long. I always believed relying on someone else would make me a burden. But when I saw him struggling to breathe through that mask, I was terrified. I'm not sure I'm strong enough anymore. Nate reached over, his hand gently clasping her cold fingers. Elena, you're not alone. I'm here, and I'll stay as long as you let me. Her tears spilled over. For the first time in years, Elena let herself stop fighting. She leaned against his shoulder, letting the rhythm of his heartbeat calm her like a lullaby. That night, Nate stayed awake with her at the hospital. He purchased boxed meals, handled paperwork, and contacted charities and medical professionals he knew to explore financial aid options. Elena watched him move tirelessly, her heart swelling with a warmth that felt both strange and achingly comforting. Maybe, she thought, this time I don't have to fight alone. When dawn broke, Elena's father stirred awake, his tired eyes softening at the sight of his daughter asleep against Nate's shoulder. A faint smile touched his lips as he whispered to himself, At last, she's found someone to carry it with her. The morning light streamed through the hospital window, ushering not just a new day, but a new beginning in Elena's heart. Tristan Montgomery stood at the podium, clad in a flawless gray pinstripe suit, hair slicked to perfection, as if defeat was a concept foreign to him. Dozens of cameras flashed like fireworks, reporters scribbling as his voice rang out, cold and brimming with self-assurance. All accusations slandering my family are baseless. Montgomery Corp has always conducted business transparently. We have never engaged in any unlawful activity. These reckless claims against me and my family are nothing more than blatant lies. From the audience seats, Elena felt her chest tighten, her hands clenched so hard her nails dug into her skin. The night before, Nate had urged her, You can't stay silent forever. Only when you speak the truth will you finally be free of the shadows. But now facing the sheer power of the Montgomery name, surrounded by the press, Elena felt herself shrink just like 4 years ago. The girl who had lost everything, standing in the ashes, with no one to believe her. Victor Bishop leaned close, murmuring, "If you want, we can leave right now. But Elena, this is your chance to reclaim your honor, not just for yourself, but for your father." Elena drew a deep breath. Suddenly, her eyes burned with resolve. She rose to her feet and strode toward the microphone. The hall erupted in whispers. Tristan's frown deepened, his aides whispering frantically behind him. At the back of the room, Nate, camera in hand, gave her a firm nod of encouragement. Gripping the microphone, Elena spoke, her voice trembling, but not weak. "My name is Elena Marquez. Many of you may know me from the gala video. But before everything collapsed, I was a student at Donovan Academy, and I had a family who ran a small company with big dreams, Marquez Shipping." Several journalists looked up, flipping through their notes. Someone muttered, "Marquez Shipping? Wasn't that bought out?" Elena continued, her gaze locked on the cameras. 4 years ago, Montgomery Corp orchestrated the takeover of my father's company. They didn't compete fairly. They employed underhanded tactics, including manipulating contracts, bribing partners, and spreading false rumors to drive down our stock. In the end, my father, a man who spent his life building his business with sweat and honor, was forced to sign it away for scraps. The room exploded in chatter. A female reporter called out, "Do you have any proof for these claims?" Elena turned. Nate was already ready. He stepped forward, holding up a thick folder. On the large screen behind the podium, documents appeared. Leaked internal emails, financial memos, sworn statements from former partners. Page after page, line after line, shredding Montgomery Corp's polished mask. "This is the evidence," Nate declared, his voice steady, eyes shining beneath the barrage of flashes. "As a journalist, I take responsibility for these materials. We have verified their sources. Witnesses are prepared to testify in court." Tristan's face drained of color. His lips moved, struggling to respond, but the flood of questions drowned him out. "Mr. Montgomery, what about these emails? Is this why Marquez Shipping went bankrupt? Will you agree to a public hearing?" Elena gripped the mic tighter, her voice suddenly strong, ringing with conviction. "My family lost everything, but I'm not here asking for pity. I'm here to say that justice doesn't belong only to the wealthy. Even if I'm just a dancer who once abandoned her dream, a waitress scraping by, I still have the right to demand honor for my father, for myself." For a heartbeat, silence blanketed the hall. Then applause erupted like a tidal wave. Cheers, chairs scraping, camera shutters firing in rapid bursts. Someone shouted, "She's our modern-day David." Within seconds, a major news outlet tweeted, "Elena Marquez, the gala dancer who became David against the Goliath of the 21st century." Tristan struggled to compose himself, but his face flushed crimson, sweat rolling down his temple. From the front row, his father, Charles Montgomery, clenched his jaw so tightly his whole face quivered. They had never expected the girl they'd buried in the past to rise and challenge them so openly. Elena turned, and her gaze found Nate's. He smiled, lifted his camera, and clicked. In that instant, she felt strength surge through her again. When the press conference ended, reporters swarmed Elena with questions. Dazed, she felt Nate slip an arm around her shoulders, whispering in her ear, "You just did what thousands dream of and never dare. I'm proud of you." Elena laughed shakily, her voice still trembling. "My heart nearly jumped out of my chest back there. Good thing it didn't, otherwise it would have landed right in my hands." Nate winked, making her giggle, the tension easing just a little. Victor Bishop approached, resting a firm hand on her shoulder. "Today you were more than a dancer. You became a voice for everyone who's ever been crushed. From now on, every step you take on stage won't just be art, it will be proof of who you are." Tears streaked down Elena's cheeks, but her smile gleamed brighter than ever. She knew this was only the beginning of the war, but at least she was no longer alone. Beside her was Nate, not just with his camera, but with his heart. And more importantly, Elena had reclaimed what the Montgomerys once stole, her honor. The rehearsal room at night was unusually quiet. No more hurried footsteps of performers, no more dry reminders from Victor Bishop. Only the mirrors reflecting the soft yellow light from the ceiling lamps and a faint tango tune drifting from the speakers. Elena sat on the floor, stretching her aching legs. Her mind was still filled with worries about her father and the piling medical bills. But tonight, when she saw Nate walk in, carrying a small paper bag and the familiar bottle of juice, she suddenly felt as if the whole world had softened. "You came again? I thought you'd be busy chasing stories." Elena half teased, half surprised. Nate smiled, setting the bag down beside her. "Journalists need rest too. Photographers need to breathe. And me, I need to make sure you don't collapse." He opened the bag. Inside were a few light snacks and a box of vitamins. Elena froze for a moment. Ever since her father had been hospitalized, Nate had never left her side. Quiet, attentive, but never pitying. She was about to thank him when Nate cut her off in his calm tone. "Oh, the patient support fund you applied to the other day just got approved for a larger amount. You don't have to worry so much anymore." "Really?" Elena's eyes widened, shimmering with hope. "Yeah, an anonymous benefactor covered most of it. I just happened to find out." Elena bit her lip, heart pounding wildly. She knew at once. Most of it surely came from him. But Nate never took credit, never revealed anything beyond that gentle gaze. The way he chose to stand behind her, letting her feel she wasn't alone, made her heart swell to the point of tears. The music shifted into a romantic ballad. Elena stood up without thinking, turning gracefully on a few steps. Her simple practice dress fluttered with the rhythm, her movements soft yet proud. Nate stood watching, his hand unconsciously tightening around his camera but not lifting it. She turned to him, smiling. "Reporter Crow, want to try being my dance partner? Don't worry, I won't trample you like Tristan did." "Sounds like a threat," Nate chuckled, but still stepped closer. He awkwardly placed his hand on her waist. Elena took his other hand and adjusted his posture. In that moment, both realized the intimate closeness they had never shared before. They moved slowly, not precise like professional tango, but full of feeling. Each brush of fingers, each slightly offbeat step made Elena laugh, while Nate pretended to be stern. "Who said dancing was easy? This is clearly torture for the body. Do you know how many women would kill to be in this spot? Getting free lessons from me?" Elena pouted. "Yeah, but I'm different. I have you dancing just for me." Elena froze for a beat, her heart trembling. Nate stopped moving, looking straight into her eyes. His voice was deep, warm, so sincere it made her throat tighten. "From the moment you stepped onto that stage, I knew you didn't belong in the shadows. You were born to shine." The room went still. Only the tender music lingered, and his gaze seemed to reach deep into her soul. Elena felt all the defenses she had built up over the years dissolve. She whispered softly, "You're crazy, Nate, but maybe I need a crazy man like you." And in that instant, Nate leaned down. His lips brushed hers, light as a breeze yet fierce as if the whole universe had erupted. Elena closed her eyes, letting herself be swept away in the tenderness that still burned with fire. It wasn't just a first kiss. It was an unspoken promise that she was no longer alone, that no matter how many storms lay outside, they would still have each other. And in that dim rehearsal room, for the first time in years, Elena believed that maybe she was worthy of being loved once again. The dazzling lights flooded the Broadway theater that night. Echoes the musical that had been awaited for months was about to raise its curtain for the very first time. The crimson velvet drapes trembled softly under the hum of the crowd. Journalists, critics, and theater lovers packed every row of seats. Behind the curtain, Elena stood, her hands trembling slightly, her chest brimming with anticipation. She wore a white gown designed especially for her role, the lights reflecting off its delicate lines, making her shimmer. The scent of the wooden stage and the faint powder of makeup swept her back to when she was 16, stepping onto Donovan Academy's stage for the very first time. But this time, everything was different. In the front row, Nate sat beside her parents. Mr. Bennett looked much healthier after weeks of treatment, thanks to the foundation support. Though his suit was simple and his frame a little thinner, his eyes gleamed with pride. When Elena glanced out, he nodded as if to say, "You're on the right path now." The overture began, and Elena's heartbeat rose with the pounding of the drums. She stepped onto the stage, the spotlight wrapping around her entire body. Every step was so steady that even she was surprised. Her voice rang out, clear, powerful, unwavering. Every movement, every spin drew the audience's gaze, holding them captive. The months of grueling rehearsals under Victor Bishop's iron hand, the tears, the near collapses, all of it crystallized into this perfect moment. Victor stood in the wings, arms folded, the hardness in his eyes softening for the first time. He murmured under his breath, "This girl, she's truly become an artist." Meanwhile, Nate could hardly sit still. Camera in hand, he captured frame after frame of the moment, ignoring the rules. Through his lens, Elena was more than just an actress. She was resilience itself, the story he wanted to tell, the woman who held his eyes and his heart. The theater erupted as Elena hit the climax of her scene. Applause thundered, long and unrelenting. Some audience members rose to their feet, cheering. Elena's vision blurred with tears. In that instant, she saw her father. He sat tall, clapping tirelessly, his face glowing with pride. Beside him, Nate stood, whistling loud enough to fill the hall, his eyes screaming, "You did it, Elena!" She bowed, her heart bursting. From a nameless waitress, she had just become Broadway's newest star. In a shadowed corner of the theater, Tristan Montgomery sat silently, his face pale. Over the past weeks, the Montgomery name had collapsed after their corrupt dealings came to light. Shareholders fled, and the press mocked the once mighty empire now in ruins. Watching Elena bask in cheers, Tristan's chest tightened. He had once mocked her, dismissed her as a stain to be hidden. Now the world shouted her name while his family sank into disgrace. "It all should have been mine," he muttered bitterly, turning away as tears stung his eyes. The show ended in a storm of applause and flowers carpeting the stage. Elena bowed deeply, her gaze instinctively seeking the front row. Nate was still there, smiling brilliantly, holding his camera high as if to say, "I've captured your moment of glory." Backstage, as the curtain fell, Elena nearly collapsed into Victor's arms. "You did it, Elena," he said hoarsely. "From now on, no one can ever call you a waitress again. You're a Broadway star." Elena burst into tears, but this time, they were tears of joy. When Nate entered and pulled her into his arms in front of the entire cast, she knew her journey wasn't ending. It was only beginning. The Echo's premiere ended with roaring applause and glittering lights. But for Nate, it wasn't enough. He wanted a true ending, not just for the musical, but for their story as well. The following evening, Elena received a message. "I want you to return to where it all began. Don't ask anything, just come." When Elena stepped into the same elegant restaurant that had once hosted the charity gala, her heart quivered. Here, under hundreds of scrutinizing eyes, she had once been challenged by Tristan. Here, she had stood tall and danced, proving to the world that Elena Bennett was not weak. But tonight, the scene was transformed. The grand hall was illuminated by hundreds of candles and strings of lights. On a massive screen, clips from the gala played, interlaced with photographs Nate had taken of her throughout her journey since then. Elena's throat tightened when she saw the event manager from that night appear, smiling warmly. "Elena, I watched you step onto that dance floor years ago, and tonight, I'm so happy to witness another step forward in your life." Several of her former colleagues from the catering staff were there too. They clapped, cheered, and called her name, their eyes full of admiration and pride. Then Nate stepped into the light. He wore a black suit, but instead of the cold composure of a celebrated journalist, he carried a tender smile reserved only for her. He dropped to one knee in the very center of the dance floor, the same spot where Elena had first danced under hundreds of eyes. His voice rang out, deep and steady. "Elena, this place once tested you, but it was also here that I found you. From that moment on, I knew my life would never be the same. You turned darkness into light and gave me a reason to believe in beauty again. So, will you marry me?" There were no more whispers of ridicule, only Elena's choked sobs of happiness. Laughing through tears, She stepped forward and pulled him to his feet. Yes, in the very place that once terrified me. Today, I want to start again, but with you. Nate held her tight, and their kiss echoed beneath the grand ceiling, met with thunderous applause and sparkling fireworks from the balcony. Once known only as the gala dancer, Elena was now more than a Broadway star. She was a woman who had found her place, standing proudly beside the love of her life. A year had passed since the premiere of Echoes shook Broadway to its core. Spring had returned to the city, and Elena's life seemed bathed in a new radiant light, fulfilled and brimming with happiness. That morning, sunlight flooded the small apartment in the Upper West Side. Elena stood by the window, holding a cup of coffee, watching the neighborhood come alive. Behind her, Nate wrestled with a stack of large photo prints, grumbling on purpose just to make her laugh. You know, Nate said, half serious and half teasing, these will be displayed right in the main gallery, and I swear at least 10 people will ask for the phone number of the gala dancer. Elena turned around, raising a brow. Oh? Then I'd better get ready with a pen to start signing for them, shouldn't I? He laughed out loud, walked over, and wrapped his arms around her from behind. Wrong. You only sign for one person, and I already have the marriage certificate as proof. Elena blushed, giving his hand a playful smack, though the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her. Life with Nate was always like this, warm, playful, and full of teasing moments that kept her heart alive. Elena's career had exploded after Echoes. She received invitations from major directors, appeared on magazine covers, and became a symbol of resilience and talent. But no matter how dazzling the stage was, she still made time to cook dinner for her parents at least a few times each week. Mr. Bennett's health had improved greatly thanks to careful care and timely treatment. He often sat in the small backyard garden, reading the paper and listening to music, sometimes tapping along as if he were keeping rhythm with the musicals his daughter performed. Mrs. Bennett frequently accompanied Elena to her shows, her eyes always glowing with pride. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Mr. Bennett spoke slowly. I used to worry you would collapse under the weight of loss, but now I see perhaps those trials turned you into a flame that will never go out. Elena squeezed her father's hand, smiling through misty eyes. Across the table, Nate quietly watched, his heart swelling with gratitude for being welcomed into this family. Nate's photography exhibition opened in early summer. The venue was a sleek gallery in Soho, where soft lighting cast reflections over striking black and white images. Visitors lingered longest before the gala dancer series. Each frame captured Elena in all her dimensions. The fierce determination in the rehearsal room, sweat glistening on her tired face, and the moment she spun under the stage lights as if the whole world had stopped breathing. An art critic exclaimed, "This isn't just photography, this is the journey of a girl becoming a living legend." Elena stood silently before the largest piece. Herself in a white gown on opening night, arms spread wide as if to embrace the entire theater. Nate came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. I told you before, didn't I? He murmured. From the very first moment you stepped onto the floor, I knew you didn't belong to the shadows, and I'll never stop capturing your light. Elena looked at him, her heart surging with indescribable emotion. The hardships, the wounds, everything had faded into the past. Ahead lay a radiant future, where love, family, and art merged into one eternal symphony. When night fell, the gallery was still crowded, but Elena and Nate slipped away quietly, hand in hand, strolling down a street glittering with lights. Elena spoke softly, her voice full of conviction. I think a fulfilling life isn't about having everything. It's about having the right person beside you, walking through it all together. Nate squeezed her hand and replied gently, Then we've already found the fullness of our lives, Elena. They stopped in the middle of the street, sharing a gentle kiss beneath the golden lights, a promise of a life complete.